Red Fae 48, Episode 9, Meeting Mr. Bear. Hello, social media mites and mavens. James Hohman here. Meeting at a matinee of the New York City Ballet could not have been more perfect for the two of us. Harold maintained two separate subscriptions of 2 seats each in the first and second tiers. Plus, his mother had one on Sunday evenings for 4 seats in the fourth ring. Both were exceptionally generous with their subscription seats. Either cousins or dear friends would be offered the opportunity to enjoy the glories of this preeminent company. From my perspective as an usher, Harold was always accompanied by a different friend, male or female. Getting an accurate read on my gaydar was difficult until one evening his accompanying friend Kenny approached me. I freely told Kenny that I'd recently ended a 6-year relationship the previous year and was working 2 jobs to cope with being alone. Kenny asked if I would be interested in meeting a friend of his who was interested. Harold Shepard was indeed very interesting and surprisingly interested in me. We continued our intermission chats for a few weeks until he finally asked me what I was doing after one night's performance. We met at the Revlon fountain after I'd changed from my usher drag and walked me uptown to West 90th Street. He thought I was funny. Well, that evening in 1984 began my next big adventure, the most loving, intelligent, mutually beneficial adventure I had never known. I crossed the footlights and fell into bed. What had I found? A question that kept answering itself in the sincerest, most communicative, physically the most gratifying, wonderfully challenging, loving, and mutually beneficial ways imaginable. While AIDS was still raging through our community, and as we attended memorial services with monthly regularity, we 2 gay men found love for almost 15 years. After years of dancing, singing, and performing my heart out, I became a temporary employee in corporate America, a theater of another kind, not exactly absurd, but close. It paid well and gave me a very different perspective on life in the Big Apple. Now, missing the theater immensely, but getting paid regularly, I bring to you direct from Broadway, yours truly, starring as a temporary word processor and then future full-time executive assistant for corporate executives throughout Manhattan. To maintain my connection to the world of performing arts, I got a second job ushering at the New York State Theater in Lincoln Center on nights and weekends. I was one of few ushers who had any interest in watching and or listening to what was happening on stage. 3 ushers were assigned nightly to each side of the theater's 4 tiers. One usher stood at the stairway, one remained outside the audience area but within the theater, and one had to sit inside with the audience. I always volunteered for that choice position. Ushering was a great opportunity for me. I could sit on the stairs of the 4th ring and listen to the New York City Opera or watch the New York City Ballet from season to season. I didn't have to know anything about the opera languages or the specifics of Balanchine's neoclassic ballet technique to feel what was being conveyed. What I saw and heard frequently moved me to tears. I understood the emotional impact and the grandeur of the performing arts, and seriously pondered why I had left them. It was New York City Ballet's summer season of 1984. Choreographer George Balanchine had died the year before. The ballet audience's collective sense of bereavement hung in the air of the theater lobby during each intermission, almost as dominating as the two Ellie Nadelman sculptures featured at either end of the theater's mezzanine. They were grieving, I was grieving. It's a physical law of nature. Water seeks its own level. I was indeed feeling alone, mourning the loss of my first relationship. Christopher had located to Los Angeles to benefit his career and decided never to return to New York City. We became bi-coastal, which was as expensive as it was frustrating. I ran out of money. Now, trying to accommodate myself to a life of solitude, I wondered if I was still lost. How could or would anyone find me if I couldn't even find myself? This ushering job was challenging. Waiting on the New York City public required an ego strength that was wickedly tested on a daily basis. I wasn't feeling my most self-assured, seating Lincoln Center ballettomanes, the moneyed, educated dilettantes who paid to be seen appreciating Balanchine while listening to Bizet. I learned that the world of show was not strictly limited to the stage. During intermissions, I would usually be stationed at the top of the grand stairway, answering questions as to the location of the restrooms and assisting crowds in any way I could. Those seeking my assistance were the kind of people I'd only observe from a distance as a Broadway performer, supremely confident New Yorkers. They were not the least bit interested in helping me maintain the little ego strength I had struggled to attain. Wearing black shoes, black trousers, and a black cardigan sweater with a white shirt and black tie provided me a uniform, something like an armor of protection. Each performance I felt metaphorically run over, a feeling of servile insignificance. Each evening after ushering, I would wander up Broadway to my Upper West Side one-room apartment on the fourth floor of the most ramshackle brownstone on West 90th Street. I felt alone, and the feeling of being lost, which came with no intermission. At the New York State Theater during one intermission, while standing at my assigned post, a man with an impressive dark beard approached and asked my name. He seemed mature and gentlemanly. I answered his questions calmly. Homan, Homan, no L, James Homan, thinking he was just another Balanchine Brahmin. He then asked what I was doing after the ballet. I lied. I doubt you will be catching the Concorde tonight, as it's already left JFK, the man responded, blowing holes through my excuse of having to rise early the next day to begin a 2-week vacation in France. To my surprise, he asked if he could walk me home. His voice and laugh were so sexy, mature, and confident. Okay, so you know the Concorde schedule. Impressive. A walk uptown? I hesitated. My fantasies ran impetuously fast forward as I attempted to take one step at a time, practically tripping over my hormonal rushes. Finally, I said, yes, and smiled more broadly than usual. When he told me his name was Harold, yikes, that was my father's name. I told him that my quota for men named Harold had already been met in this life. He laughed. He told me that he too lived off Broadway on the Upper West Side. Following the performance, we began our walk uptown. We walked, we talked. Suzanne Farrell and Peter Martins had danced that night, and we agreed that they offered many in the audience something that was probably missing in their actual lives: slow sex. Harold had graduated from Columbia with a BA in English literature, but after being smitten by the actress Susan Browning in the Broadway production of Company, which he saw 11 times, he said he decided to pursue a career in theater. When he told me that he'd also had an MFA in theater from Temple in Philadelphia, I thought, well, he must be Jewish. Being from the Midwest, I'd never heard of Temple University. Oy vey. As a member of the Actors Space Theater Company, he appeared infrequently in their off-Broadway productions. We spoke of auditioning, our summer theater and national tour experiences. At the corner of 90th Street and West End Avenue, as we shook hands and said goodnight, I tweaked his wrist hairs, thinking I'd never see him again. I thought at least one of us should enjoy a tingle. He was Ivy League, well-traveled, exceptionally well-spoken, and suavely hirsute. I told him that since I found it difficult to call him by my father's name, I would have to refer to him as Mr. Bear. Masturbation that evening was marvelous, darling. Now, here was a new stratosphere to my universe. 2 weeks later, after flirting unabashedly across the theater's promenade, he asked me out for coffee. He thought I was funny. In truth, I was feeling a bit scared. There were significant differences in our respective backgrounds. His deceased father had been a physician in Maplewood, New Jersey. Mine had been a postal clerk in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But I could not resist his kindness, his intelligence, or his magnificent baritone speaking voice. A month later, we slept together. And that concludes this podcast. Please check in next week for episode 10, introducing Harold John Shepard. Ours was a gay relationship unlike anything either of us had ever known to be possible. When a little boy is raised to live lies, the reality of his truths can be more than a little daunting. In fact, it can be terrifying. Challenges did indeed present themselves, and we faced them together amidst the rampaging pandemic's gloomy overlay. We succeeded primarily due to the incredibly supportive friends and family, which were so encouraging and loving. We celebrated with everyone. It felt absurd in a theatrical kind of way, not unlike Vladimir or Didi and Estragon and Gogo in Beckett's Waiting for Godot. But we weren't waiting for anything. We were planning our future. Thank you for your time and interest. Until next week, then, be kind, do good, be happy, and love one another, remembering to coexist with tolerance while embracing similarities and respecting differences. Thank you.